Kyle Busch says he almost didn't race in 2023, and Dale Jr. reveals that there has been zero movement in regards to getting a charter for Junior Motorsports for them going Cup racing. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're ahead by starting to talk about the Pocono Cup race. As their title sponsor has been revealed, the race next week is going to be called the High Point 400. Obviously, High Point has a really big affiliation up in the Pocono area, and also High Point is a big sponsor of Stewart Haas Racing. Really good to see High Point sponsoring the Pocono Cup race next weekend. And now we're going to hedge on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Toby Christie. I was reported by Adam Stern from Sports Business Journal that Race Team Alliance digital site Racing America has a new partnership with TobyChristie.com and is bringing on Toby Christie as its new editor-in-chief. This is really awesome. Toby Christie has been one of the hardest working guys in this industry over the last couple years, and I think this is a really awesome and a great opportunity for Toby Christie. I'm looking forward to seeing him work with Racing America. He's worked hard for us. Congratulations to everyone part of that team. Everyone part of the team works really hard and is a really good opportunity, and very happy to see that Toby Christie is working with Racing Team America. And now we're going to hedge on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Michael McDowell. As it was reported by Bob Poggers that Front Row has told him that with the new sponsorship he's getting, I believe, for Pocono in New Hampshire, that he is officially sold out on sponsorship for 2023. This is really awesome to see. Also, sometimes you see that Michael McDowell does struggle with sponsorship, so to see he's got fully sponsored for 2023 is awesome and great to see. This could help with his future. Obviously, a lot of rumors about Michael McDowell's future past 2023 could join SHR in 2024. Really good to see that Michael McDowell is bringing sponsors and funding in for the rest of the 2023 season. And now we're going to hedge on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Busch. Now, we do have a couple Kyle Busch stories we're going to talk about today's episode. One of the Kyle Busch stories we want to talk about is Kyle Busch's consecutive top 10 streak. And right now, Kyle Busch has 7 straight top 10s currently at the moment. That is the longest streak for Kyle Busch since 2019 when he won the championship, his second championship, and also the longest streak for a driver, Rich Schultz Racing, in 10 years. Kyle Busch is having a fantastic year in 2023. If you would have told me Kyle Busch was going to have the best average finish, which right now is 11.2, I probably would have laughed at you. I thought Kyle Busch was going to do good and get a couple wins, but I didn't think he'd be a championship threat or a contender. He's having a fantastic year. He's been an amazing and incredible job, and glad to see that Kyle Busch is continuing to have a lot of success with Rich Schultz Racing in just his first year with the team. And now we're going to hedge on to the next story of today's episode as we're going to talk about the New Hampshire purse money. As, of course, every time we have a NASCAR Cup, Xfinity Series, or truck race, Bob Poggers puts out the purse money for the week. And according to him, for the Cup race, it's $7,520,319. And for the Xfinity Series rates, it's $1,226,689. That's some decent money for this weekend. Obviously, the Cup Series is always going to have more money due to the charter system and the charter money as well. The Xfinity Series, though, has some pretty good money for this weekend, and that money is going to be split between the teams. But that is the purse money for this weekend at New Hampshire. Some pretty good purse money, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to hedge on to the next story of today's episode as we're going to talk about the SRX. Now, it was reported by Adam Stern yesterday that while NASCAR is evaluating possible exhibitions overseas in the next year or two, SRX is also considering an offer it's received to hold a race internationally. Obviously, the SRX kicked off their 2023 season, the third season of the SRX, and we've seen the SRX already have a lot of success to where they could be going international. Now, I would imagine the SRX is probably only looking to go international by going maybe to Mexico or maybe going to Canada, because there are some Canadian tracks up there, some really good short tracks up in Canada like Delaware Speedway, which shows some pretty good racing up there as well. Nonetheless, I think it's really cool to see you're seeing some international presence and international growth. I think it's really good for the sport of racing when the SRX continues to grow, and the SRX is looking to make some really big moves, which I think is really exciting for the SRX long-term future. Love that they're continuing to look at international growth. And now we're going to hedge on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Jimmie Johnson at Chad Knaus. As it was announced on Wednesday that Jimmie Johnson and Chad Knaus are officially eligible for the 2024 NASCAR Hall of Fame as a modern ballot class. It was also announced that Donnie Allison will be part of the Pioneer ballot class as well. No surprise that Jimmy Johnson, Chackenhouse are on the ballot. Obviously, Chackenhouse, a 7-time NASCAR Cup Series Championship crew chief, and Jimmy Johnson, a 7-time NASCAR Cup Series champion. I would imagine those two are likely going to get into the NASCAR Hall of Fame in 2024, considering the success that both of the individuals have. They're probably the favorites to make it in, and I would expect in 2024 that both Jimmy Johnson and Chackenhouse are going to get into the NASCAR Hall of Fame. I expect that to happen, and I do believe that is going to happen in 2024, which, in my opinion, both drivers and people deserve a shot to get into the NASCAR Hall of Fame. And now we're going to hedge on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Larson. Now, if you watched the Eldora Million last night, you saw the really scary and massive crash that happened about halfway through the race. On a restart, we saw Aaron Reitzel get loose and spin out, and Kyle Larson had nowhere to go. And we saw a massive pileup between 5 or 6 drivers, including Gio Scoletti, was involved in the crash. Now, Kyle Larson, think flipped once or twice, and they got hit in the fuel tank once again. Luckily for Kyle Larson fans, he was able to walk away from the crash. Thank God everyone was okay from the wreck. Everyone was able to walk away. That was a really, really scary and a really, really dangerous wreck. Obviously, a lot of talk about Kyle Larson being involved because we've seen 200 drivers already be injured this year. Chase Elliott from a snowboarding accident, and of course, Alex Bowman in a sprint car wreck as well. Luckily, everyone was okay in this situation. I'm glad to see Kyle Larson walked away. He didn't update on the situation. I know he did tweet out earlier today, congratulate Logan Schuchart on winning the Eldora Million. He was able to win. But I'm glad to see Larson seems to be okay. The Larson should be able to race this weekend, which is really, really good to see considering how bad the wreck was. I'm just glad everyone, though, in all seriousness and all honesty, was okay and everyone was able to walk away. Thank God everyone was able to walk away because that was a terrible and a really, really scary wreck. And now we're going to hedge on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about William Sawash. Now, William Sawash spoke to Mark Crystal from Front Stretch, and he kind of revealed that he is going to expand his racing schedule in 2024. He will, of course, run part-time in ARCA in the 2024 season. Of course, can't run full-time until he turns 18 years old, but he is planning to make some Xfinity Series and Truck Series starts once again in 2024. Now, interesting, William Sawash turns 18 October 3rd, so he would not be able to make some Xfinity Series starts until the end of the 2024 NASCAR Xfinity Series season. But he plans to go full-time in the Xfinity Series in 2025. William Sawash, in my opinion, is one of the most talented up-and-coming stars in the sport. He's won a couple ARCA races in his time in ARCA East and ARCA West as well. And he's someone who's been competing for ARCA wins in 2023 as well. I think William Sawash is someone to watch for long-term. He's a long-term prospect in the Toyota camp. He's someone who's been coming up the ranks. I think he's part of Kevin Harvick Incorporated as well. A lot of people look at William to have a lot of potential to do a lot of great things. Some people do believe that William Sawash could win a Cup Series championship one day. Nonetheless, I think it's a really, really big pickup that he will get to make some starts in Xfinity next year. Obviously, will be likely in the 18 car. We're just going to have to wait and see what happens. But nonetheless, it's really, really good to see that William Sawash is going to expand his racing schedule. I think he's really, really talented. And I think he's going to do a lot of great things in this series long term. Great opportunity for him nonetheless, and happy to see that William Sawash will get to make some more starts in other series in 2023. Really awesome stuff, and really glad to see he'll be expanding his schedule heading into the 2024 season. And now we're going to hedge on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Silverstone TV ratings for Formula One. So Adam Stern put out the Silverstone TV ratings on Wednesday, and according to him, ESPN2 got an average of a 1.17 million viewers for Sunday's British Grand Prix. That is off slightly from a 1.24 million viewers from 2022. Honestly, those numbers are not that bad considering it was on ESPN2, but what's interesting is there's been a lot more races this year in Formula One that have been down on TV ratings. And it's a shame because I thought that was one of the better Formula One races, but I think one of the reasons why F1 ratings have in general been down in 2023 compared to 2022 is you don't have an exciting championship battle. Max Verstappen right now has a mathematically 99-point lead over Sergio Perez. And Max Verstappen has won the last 6 consecutive Formula One races in a row. And Red Bull has won every single race in Formula One this season. So I can understand why people are frustrated with the domination of Red Bull in 2023. I think that's a huge reason why we have not seen a lot of people tune into Formula One this season. Because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I heard a stat earlier that they've led all but 25 laps this year in Formula One. Kind of gets boring, even though I thought the race is okay. I think F1 can be very, very boring, and it's always not the most exciting racing overall. So hopefully the racing can get better in Formula One, because in my opinion, I don't think the racing at this moment is really that good in Formula One, to be honest. And now we're going to hedge on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Atlanta TV ratings from this past weekend. As reported by Adam Stern on Wednesday, that USA got a 1.45 rating and 2.56 million viewers for Sunday's short NASCAR race at Atlanta. That is off slightly from a 1.51 rating and 2.626 million viewers from last year. Honestly, disappointed the numbers are down. I thought they would be up considering the success of the Chicago Street Course event, but obviously not entirely shocked by this as well, considering that this race did get shortened and a lot of people left after the end of the race because obviously with the rain delays, and when you have a rain delay, you tend to drop from about 15 to 20% of your viewership. Again, it is disappointing to see the numbers are down for the Cup Series race, but again, it's not terrible. But hey, we didn't drop as much of the Formula One ratings, and honestly, with cable starting to drop off in viewership in general, it's not a complete shock or a complete surprise to see ratings are down on that aspect in that front. Again, disappointing news here, ratings are down. Again, because the last 2 weeks, in my opinion, have been up. I do think it being on USA, though, the race being on USA, of course, like I said, with cable dropping, you're going to have less people that are generally going to tune in to the cable races than the main NBC races. So I'm a little surprised they didn't put on main NBC, but I understand why they decided not to do that. Nonetheless, it's disappointing here the ratings are down, but overall, I think it was the right. Disappointing to hear, but overall, just hopefully we can see ratings go up next week in New Hampshire, this week in New Hampshire. But weather, once again, is going to be a factor for this weekend, and this race might get delayed to Monday, which might affect the ratings overall. And now we're going to hedge on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Frankie Muniz. Now, there have been a lot of questions in regards to Frankie Muniz's future and if he was going to run this week in Iowa. Well, Frankie Muniz revealed, I believe, on Thursday or Wednesday evening that he will actually be racing this weekend at Iowa with Retta Jones Racing. This is really, really good news to hear because there's been a lot of talk about Frankie, like I said, with the sponsorship situation, if he was going to run every single race in 2023. Glad to see they were able to find some sponsorship funding for Frankie Muniz because, in my opinion, I want to see Frankie Muniz have a chance and a shot to compete for the full championship this year in 2023. I still think it's going to be really tough to beat Jesse Love unless Jesse Love crashed out a lot this year because Frankie, I think, is 42 or 43 points behind Jesse Love currently at the moment. But he's currently second in the points, has been doing a really good job this year. He hasn't scored a top 5, but he's been doing a really good job. He's only had 2 or 3 finishes outside of top 10 this year, which is really, really impressive, and has been doing a really good job in ARCA this season. There's obviously a lot of talk about Frankie's future past the 2023 season. It sounds like at this point that he may be moving up to Xfinity or trucks heading into 2024. But overall, in my opinion, I think he's been doing a really good job, and I'm glad to see that Frankie will get to run this weekend because I think he's a good driver. He's done a good job. I didn't know how good he was going to do, but I think overall he's done a really, really solid and a really good job, and glad to see that Frankie is going to be running this weekend at Iowa, well, of course, tomorrow night. Hopefully, he do a really good job in that race and maybe get his first top 5, which I think he could get a top 5 this weekend here in the ARCA race at Iowa, which is going to be a combination race with the ARCA East or West Series. And now we're going to hedge on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Sheldon Creed. As it was announced on Wednesday early morning that Sheldon Creed will officially make his NASCAR Cup Series debut later this year at Kansas, driving the number 78 car for Live Fast Motorsports. This is a really great opportunity for Sheldon Creed. Obviously, currently drives full-time in the Xfinity Series in the number 2 car for Richard Childress Racing and has struggled in the couple years he has ran Xfinity, but I feel like this year in 2023, he has been a lot better. What's very interesting to know is that this is going to be the second time he's made his debut with a team technically associated with BJ McLeod Motorsports. Remember, he made his NASCAR Xfinity Series debut in 2021 for Live Fast for BJ McLeod Motorsports in the 78 team and finished in the top 15. Now, Live Fast Motorsports obviously has struggled in their time in the NASCAR Cup Series, but I would imagine that Rich Childress Racing is going to work with them to make sure they have better equipment, and Wheeling Engineering is going to sponsor him as well. Nonetheless, I think this is an awesome and a great opportunity for Sheldon Creed. I think he'll do a really, really good job. I'm looking forward to this opportunity for him, and nonetheless, I think Sheldon Creed does have a chance and a shot to maybe get a top 30. I will say Live Fast Motorsports, though, they have improved as an organization. Like I said, I'm not expecting him to contend and go like a win or anything, or maybe get like a top 15 or top 20. Maybe a top 30 is possible. I think Sheldon's got a lot of talent. I know that he's struggled in the Xfinity the last couple years, but like I said, he's gotten better. But I think Sheldon Creed does have a chance and a shot to do really good in his debut. I'm looking forward to it. Glad to see that he's got a chance and shot to make his debut, and hopefully he can do a really good job in that number 78 car for Live Fast Motorsports in his debut. Just saying, if he had daily downforce sponsorship, he'd probably do a lot better. But great to see that Sheldon Creed, nonetheless, is making his Cup Series debut for Live Fast Motorsports. And now we're going to hedge on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Thunder Road. Now, if you've been following the story of what's been going on in Vermont, there has been historic flooding that's been happening out there. We're thinking about everybody that's been affected by the flooding out there at Thunder Road and at Vermont as well. Because of what's been going on there and with a state emergency being declared, Thunder Road will not host an SRX race in 2023, meaning that Stafford is going to host once again another SRX race next week or this upcoming Thursday. I think this is absolutely the right call, unfortunately, for Stafford to come into play, and I appreciate Stafford stepping up to play to basically take over the race overall, because with what's been going on up in Vermont, I think he really had no choice but to make the decision. Granted, they could have gone to other tracks in the New England area, but overall, this was the right and good call. Because of this, next year, Thunder Road will get a race in 2024, which I'm really, really happy about that. Again, really unfortunate situation, but there's nothing they could do in that, and I'm glad they made the decision now. Maybe they could have made it a little bit sooner, but with everything underwater at the racetrack currently at the moment, they really didn't have a choice. They had to make the decision, and I think this was absolutely the right call and justified call. We're thinking about everybody that's been affected by the flooding up there, and hopefully we can get back to the racetrack in the future as well. But we'll be back at Stafford next week, and hopefully we'll have some good racing there. Hopefully weather won't affect the end of this race, because it's the first Stafford race, which was won by Denny Hamlin. Of course, that race was really, really good. He had drivers like Haley Deegan in that race, and she did a solid job getting a top 5. Yeah, Ryan Newman up there getting a second place finish. We'll see what happens. You're going to have guys like Kyle Busch racing this week, and also have other drivers to talk about in a second racing in the event as well, which I think is really, really exciting. But it's disappointing here the race got canceled, but there's nothing they could do in that situation. And now we're going to hedge on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ryan Preece. As it was announced yesterday afternoon that Ryan Preece is going to run the SRX race at Stafford Speedway. Ryan Preece, who currently drives an over 41 car for Stewart-Haas Racing in the NASCAR Cup Series, will make his SRX debut. This is going to be a really awesome opportunity for Ryan Preece, and I think Ryan Preece could honestly be the favorite right now to win that Stafford race, because Ryan Preece has a lot of experience from racing modifieds at Stafford and has won quite a few races at Stafford as well, and is generally from this area. I think Ryan Preece easily has a really good chance and a really good shot to win the race at Stafford. I think he's going to be a threat. I think he's going to be easily a contender to get it done. I think he's got a shot to get it done, and nonetheless is a fantastic and great opportunity. He's always going to have to beat drivers like Brad Keselowski, Kevin Harvick, Haley Deegan, and then, of course, we'll have to keep an eye on other drivers like Kyle Busch and Ron Capps and Tony Stewart. We're going to be competing this week as well, but I think Ryan Preece has a really good chance and a shot to get it done, and he might be my pick to win this upcoming race at Stafford this week. Great opportunity for him, and he might be the favorite to get it done this upcoming race at Stafford this upcoming Thursday. And now we're going to hedge on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Kentucky Speedway. Now, I've seen a lot of push for this track to come back by a lot of people, including Senator Rand Paul, who a lot of these people are pushing for Kentucky to get back on the schedule. Obviously, Kentucky Speedway is an intermediate track, and a lot of people would like to see Kentucky Speedway back on the schedule. But I want to say this about Kentucky Speedway. Kentucky Speedway's turns are very similar to Texas Motor Speedway. If you want to know my opinion on Texas Motor Speedway, I think Texas Motor Speedway is one of the worst tracks in NASCAR. And the only reason that people even want this track is because they saw the great finishes the last 2 years. And don't get me wrong, the finishes in 2019 and 2020 where Cole Custer got his first career victory and Kurt Busch got his first win with Chip Ganassi, those finishes were epic and awesome. But does anyone remember the rest of the racing there outside of the finishes? No. The racing there has not been good ever. I'll say the Xfinity Series and Truck Series sometimes put on great racing, but the Cup racing product there was never good. And in my opinion, I never want to see this track back on the schedule. I understand there's a huge push for intermediate racing, and I get that and understand that. But there are better tracks on the circuit that can host racing. I think Chicagoland is a perfect example. Chicagoland, great track for racing. Obviously, NASCAR wants to stay in the Chicago market long term. I do not want to see Kentucky come back to the schedule because I think a lot of people are overhyping this track and did not produce good racing outside the finishes. I think people look at the finishes and think, oh, that's a great race. I think people forget that a few years ago, no one wanted this track back. I see people saying, well, why do we want the Brickyard back? Well, the Brickyard, I want to see how the next gen car races there because a lot of people compare it to Pocono. And Pocono's produced great racing. Kentucky, with how bad the turns were, if they had the normal mile and a half layout they had before the repay, I would probably consider bringing the track back. But right now, I just don't think the track produces great racing. I understand it brings a lot of money, but it would take a few years for the track to be back. Anyways, they got to clear out the trees and everything around that racetrack currently at the moment. I just do not think right now, at this moment, it would produce great racing. I might be wrong, but I think right now the racing at the track would not be good. I personally do not want to see Kentucky Speedway get a cup date anymore or any racing at the track anymore. Hope that track goes to waste and gets destroyed because I'm not a fan of Kentucky. I think the track sucks and it should never come back to NASCAR ever again. I know, like I said, it had good finishes, but the track should never come back to the NASCAR schedule, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Trevor Bayne. Now, we've talked about Trevor Bayne a couple times on the channel, including during my silly season update. But Trevor Bayne may be racing once again for Joe Gibbs Racing in 2023 in the number 19 car. Obviously, Trevor Bayne did reveal that he was supposed to maybe run full-time in the Truck Series in 2023. I think Devotion Nutrition was going to be that sponsor he was going to use, but unfortunately, that sponsorship fell through. Luckily for Trevor Bayne, it sounds like he's going to be working, I think, with Southeastern Bank, and he actually was spotted in a Joe Gibbs Racing shop. Now, if you want my honest opinion about Trevor Bayne, he did an extremely good job last year in his like NASCAR Xfinity Series starts, driving the number 18 car, and almost won a couple races as well. I remember how strong he was at Auto Club. I think he finished second or third in that race, and like quite a few laps in the number 18 car as well. Ran really good in National, I think finished in the top 5 there. And overall, it's just been disappointing to see Trevor Bayne not be able to race this year in 2023. I think he's done a solid job working in the Fox broadcast this year, which I think is one of the better parts of that Fox broadcast. But like I said, I think it's really disappointing that Trevor has not gone to run full-time in NASCAR, and I think a lot of fans really want to see Trevor Bayne come back. I know Trevor Bayne struggled in the Cup Series, but I think in the Xfinity Series, he has always done a really good job in that series. And I really hope that he gets a chance and a shot and an opportunity to once again race once again. It sounds like there's a good chance it's going to happen, which I think he deserves another chance and a shot of that happening. He's a good driver. It's good to see that he's basically getting back into racing. Sounds like in 2023 and maybe just maybe 2024 he can go full time. Looks like he's got some sponsorship funding that really wants to work with him, and I'm glad to see Trevor Bayne make some starts in NASCAR once again in 2023 because I think he deserves a chance and a shot to race once again in the 2023 season. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Eldora. Now, Eldora Speedway is currently owned by Tony Stewart. And Tony Stewart revealed to the media, and Matt Weaver from Sports App put out a tweet in regards to this, that Tony Stewart wants Eldora to once again host a cup race in the future. Now, Eldora actually used to be on the NASCAR schedule from 2013 till 2019. And obviously, they were supposed to host a race in 2020 for the pandemic, unfortunately affected that race. Now, obviously, Eldora Speedway Tony Stewart was really wanting the Cup Series to come there in 2021. But Tony Stewart was asked what's going on with Bristol Dirt. Obviously, they started going Bristol in 2021, and Tony Stewart made the executive decision to not bring NASCAR back there in 2021 due to NASCAR going to Bristol Dirt. Now, I've said this from time to time. I really do want to see Eldora host a NASCAR Cup Series race or have racing back there because obviously there's a lot of talk right now behind the scenes that Bristol Dirt is not going to host a Cup Series race at all in 2023, or racing in general. It sounds like Bristol is going to be cut from 2 dates to 1 day in general in 2024. And if you want my opinion, I think Eldora deserves a chance and a shot and an opportunity to host a NASCAR Cup Series race. I want to see Cup cars there and race there, and I really thought they could have had them. Plus, they have 30,000 fans, which I think is very solid seating overall, and I think fans would definitely show up. Obviously, Tony Stewart and NASCAR have had a little bit of have been branching out, and obviously the S-Works is a big thing that has been very, very successful. If fans have shown up, obviously Tony Stewart said he was fed up with NASCAR, but like I said, Tony wants Eldora to have an opportunity and a chance and a shot to host a NASCAR Cup Series day, and I think Eldora does deserve a chance and a shot and an opportunity to host a Cup day, in my honest opinion. So I really hope it gets a chance and a shot. I would think it should be the replacement dirt track. I think it produces great racing. I think the Cup cars would race exceptionally well there. I think the Cup cars at Bristol Dirt did, and especially in the last year, produced great racing. And I think if there's any track that deserves those, or dirt did overall, it definitely is Eldora Speedway. I really hope it gets a chance. I really hope it gets a shot. Nonetheless, I hope that Eldora does have a shot and an opportunity and a chance in the long-term future to maybe host a NASCAR Cup Series day, because I think it would produce some awesome and great racing overall, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Marco Andretti. Now, Ellen Bass reported on the SRX broadcast last night that Marco Andretti is going to do more NASCAR races in 2023 or later this season. Now, Marco Andretti has ran a couple NASCAR races already. Last year drove a big machine race in the Xfinity Series at the Charles Roval. Unfortunately, got crashed out and struggled in that event. But about a week or two ago, he raced at Mid-Ohio in the Truck Series, qualified very, very well for Spire Motorsports, but unfortunately got involved in a couple incidents, but did end up recovering to finish in 19th place. Now, we talked about this on the channel earlier this week, but Marco Andretti is not ruling out the potential possibility of running full-time in NASCAR, maybe as early as 2024. Marco Andretti did have a career in IndyCar and only scored 2 wins there, but Marco Andretti, of course, has been doing a lot more stock car racing. He ran full-time in the SRX the last 2 years, and Marco did a really good job in the SRX the last years. He contended for a heat win, actually was really fast in the beginning of the race of the SRX race last night, but unfortunately ended up falling out of that contention and finishing 6th in the race overall. I think Marco Andretti running full-time would be awesome. Now, the big question I have with Marco is what team could he run for and what teams could he run for? Well, obviously, Spire Motorsports number 7 truck is a really big possibility. They also have, though, the 77 car in Xfinity that Carson Osvar has been driving. I could see them running that car a lot more. Obviously, they have that partnership with Spire now, with Gamebridge partnering up and sponsoring with Corey LaJoie and Ty Dillon. I would imagine that they potentially could use that Gamebridge sponsorship for the Xfinity Series as well. I think Marco, they're running more NASCAR races would be awesome. Seeing the Andretti family back in racing in general, I think is really awesome. I think it's absolutely incredible, and I hope that Marco gets to run a lot more races in the future, and maybe, just maybe, he'll really will go full-time in the 2024 season. But I am very happy to see Marco around the racetrack a lot more frequently. Will he go full-time 2024? We'll have to wait and see, but I think at this point, if he does run for any team, it's going to be Aspire, what's their truck. I don't know how many races that truck is going to run, but I imagine the truck will run a few more races. Of course, the Xfinity Series, you have that 77 car available, and the Cup Series, nothing's available currently at the moment right now, unless he drives for a team that's like a mid-pack team, like a Live Fast Motorsports. But I think at this point, Marco Andretti, if he's going to run anything, it's going to potentially be a Spire truck or Spire Xfinity Series car. Keep an eye on that. It sounds like Marco will be running some more races, according to Alan Besser, which I think is really awesome and really great to see overall. Glad to see that Marco is potentially going to run some more races here in the future. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Chase Elliott. As it was announced Wednesday early morning that Chase Elliott is going to drive the 17 car for Hendrick Motorsports in the NASCAR Xfinity Series at Pocono. This will be Chase Elliott's first Xfinity Series start of the 2023 season. He's made a couple Truck Series starts in 2023, and obviously Chase Elliott is the first time he's ran anything outside of the Cup Series since coming back from his injury. Now, obviously we've seen the 17 car be pretty competitive in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, but not be able to win. Kyle Larson's done it. Kyle Larson has not won an Xfinity Series race in that car. We've seen him win in the Xfinity Series race in the 10 car for Cog Racing. We've seen his car run a couple races here, and I think Chase Elliott does have a really good chance and a shot to win that race at Pocono. And I think they're trying to give him more experience, to try to give him some more seat time, because the more seat time Chase Elliott gets, I think the better he is going to be, because right now Chase Elliott is currently below the cutoff line. But this car, like I said, is very capable of getting it done. I think he could easily go out and win the Pocono race, and I think he's got a chance to maybe sweep the weekend, because Chase Elliott has historically been a pretty good driver at Pocono Raceway. I'm glad to see, nonetheless, that Chase Elliott is getting a chance and a shot and opportunity. Like I said, I think he's got a chance to win. There's obviously going to be some other Cup guys likely in that event. I imagine maybe Kyle Busch gets a shot to run the Xfinity race in the 10 car, unless that race is already locked up. But I think Chase Elliott does have a chance and a shot to win in that number 17 car. I think he's going to be very, very competitive. I think he's got a really good chance to get it done. And nonetheless, I think Chase Elliott does have a shot to potentially get his first Xfinity Series win of the 2023 season. I think it's going to be first time he's ran a 17 car since last year at Darlington, I think. Nonetheless, great opportunity for Chase Elliott, and glad to see he'll have a chance and a shot to run the number 17 car for Hendrick Motorsports at Pocono later this year. Glad to see he's going to run next week's Xfinity race at Pocono to try to get some more experience in that car. And now we're going to jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Busch. Now, around this time last year, we talked about the Kyle Busch saga, and we were wondering where Kyle Busch was going to be racing in 2023, this course when he was driving for Joe Gibbs Racing. Well, Kyle Busch actually had an interview recently with Bob Pockrass in regards to this, and Kyle Busch says he wasn't sure if he would be racing in 2023. He told Jim France, "Nice knowing you, I'm not going to be here next season." So he said this around the time at the New Hampshire weekend that he wasn't even sure if he was going to be racing in the 2023 season. This is absolutely crazy and absolutely wild because Kyle Busch is one of the most successful NASCAR Cup Series drivers of all time, one of the most successful race car drivers of all time. But obviously during the time, Kyle Busch did not have a ride going into the 2023 season because we all thought maybe he was going to turn to JGR. But unfortunately, at the end of the 2021 season, it was announced that M&M's was going to be leaving Joe Gibbs Racing, and that meant they were going to have to find some sponsorship funding for Kyle Busch. And Joe Gibbs Racing has a different sponsorship model than Richard Childress Racing. Remember, Joe Gibbs Racing, they were looking for a full season sponsor, and they were almost had one with Oracle that was almost signed at the national weekend, which of course Oracle is part of the Red Bull group. However, when that deal fell through, and with Mark Truex Jr. announcing he would be returning for 2023 season, that was a huge reason why Kyle Busch was unfortunately let go at the end of 2022. Now, at the time, there were a lot of teams that were looking to maybe sign Kyle Busch for the 2023 season. You obviously had teams like 23XI that were in the conversations at the time. Even Stewart-Haas Racing's name had been brought up in the conversation, and Called Racing for a lot of people. We thought that was going to be a team Kyle Busch drove for. But inevitably, when the Tyler Reddick stuff started happening, we eventually knew that this was going to be the moment where we knew that Kyle Busch was potentially going to end up at Richard Childress Racing. But it's crazy to think that a guy who had been so successful in the Cup Series may not have been able to race in the 2023 season. But luckily, Kyle Busch was able to find a ride for 2023 with Richard Childress Racing. And of course, they brought him sponsorship and funding, not just existing companies like Lenovo and, of course, Cheddar's and Three Chives took around, but also companies coming in like Netspend, and of course Tarleton's coming into play, and other companies coming into play to sponsor Kyle Busch, and maybe other ones in the future that come into play. Maybe like Advent Health gets a chance because Advent Health is likely not going to be back at Trackhouse next year in 2024. It's been great to see Kyle Busch has been able to pick up sponsorship and funding, but Kyle Busch also is having an incredible year in 2023. Kyle Busch right now currently is in a regular season hunt for the championship. He's currently third in points. Right now has the best average finish of anybody in the field with 11.2 right now. And Kyle Busch, like we talked about earlier in the episode, has had 7 straight top 10 finishes in a row, a lot of top 5s and a lot of top 10s. And Kyle Busch on track to have his best season overall since 2019 season. He's won the most races he's won in a season since that 2019 season when he went on to win the championship. And you look at historical context, he won the 2015 championship, the 2019 championship, and now has a chance to win the 2023 championship. Obviously, they do have some weaknesses they have to work on, which of course involves the short track package, but Kyle Busch is having an awesome and a great season. And I want to see Kyle Busch succeed and win a lot of races. And he's having a late career resurgence at this point because Kyle Busch is definitely getting nearer to the end of his career. He's 38 years old, and there's a really good chance, like I said, that he could be retiring in the coming years, probably 2026 or 2027. Could be his last year, but also could be around for another 10 years. You really never know. But Kyle Busch has been doing an amazing and a great job in this sport, and it still has a lot of potential to win races and championships and having a chance to come back and have a resurgence with Richard Childress, which at the time we didn't think he'd be drawing for that team. We thought the lineup was going to be Austin Hill and Tyler Reddick still in 2023, but luckily they were able to figure that issue out. Tyler Reddick, of course, went to 23XI Racing and joined up with Bubba Wallace there, and both those drivers had some decent success in 2023, and Kurt Busch also been there as a mentor to really help that team as well, and Kurt obviously wants to come back and race as well. Unless it's crazy to think about this time, we didn't think Kyle Busch was going to be racing due to the sponsorship situation. Just shows that sponsorship matters a lot, but luckily Kyle Busch was able to find sponsorship, was able to find funding, and now he's got a successful ride that he's at. He's having a lot of success, of course, with Richard Childress Racing in 2023 season, and nonetheless, it's great to see him have success, and I think Kyle Busch is going to continue to have a lot of success working with Randall Burnett. He's going to continue to have a lot of great success with this team, and he's having an amazing and incredible year at RCR, and I think that is going to continue long term, and I think he's going to continue having great success, doing great things at the team, and I think he's going to win more and more races time and time again. He's having a year. He's going to win a lot. I think he will continue to win a lot in the not-so-distant future. And now we'll go ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we are talking about Junior Motorsports. Now, we've talked about Junior Motorsports a lot on this channel, and a huge reason why we've talked a lot about Junior Motorsports on this channel is due to them trying to get up to the NASCAR Cup Series. Now, obviously, Junior Motorsports has been pursuing a chance again in the Cup Series really since the 2021 season, and the first time we heard rumors about them trying to get the Cup was back in 2021 when Josh Berry won his first career NASCAR Xfinity Series race. And we got a little bit of update in regards to trying to get to the Cup Series. Well, Dale Jr. reveals that there has been zero movement in trying to get a charter. He says they want to go Cup racing, but it would have to make sense. Obviously, one of the big reasons why Junior Motorsports has not made the jump up the Cup is due to the charter system. Obviously, charters currently at the moment right now are very, very expensive. They cost around $30 million, and that number has increased since 2021 season, when I think at the time in 2021, they were about $10 million. But one of the huge reasons why charters have increased so much into price is because of the next TV deal. And we obviously know the teams want to make them permanent. Now, could NASCAR expand that charter system, add more charters to the field, and make those charters potentially cheaper? I think that certainly is possible. There's definitely probably conversations about that currently at the moment right now. But like I said, with Junior Motorsports, they obviously want to go Cup racing. They've tried to go Cup racing in the last couple of years, and they said they had opportunities where they could easily made the jump up the Cup, but unfortunately, they decided not to because of the price and the money. Now, I don't think this completely rules out the possibility that they could still make a jump up in 2024, but I think at this point, the chances are getting slimmer and slimmer for a potential move up to the Cup Series in the 2024 season, which is disappointing because I think a lot of people thought maybe they go after Spire Motorsports charter, but obviously Spire Motorsports and Jeff Dickerson revealed that they're not planning to sell charters for 2024, but there is talk that there could be a new driver in that 77 car. I look at drivers like Austin Hill, Matt DiBenedetto, maybe even Carson Osbar getting a chance to drive that 77 car next season. But talking about the future and looking at who potentially could have a chance to get in that car in 2024, if Junior Motorsports does make the jump up the Cup and they're able to finally get a charter, because something could be possible and anything's possible, nothing is off the table. If Junior Motorsports was to jump up the Cup in 2024, because I think Dale Jr. is wanting Junior Motorsports to jump up the Cup, and I think Junior Motorsports being a Cup team, they would actually be a pretty successful team in the NASCAR Cup Series. Now, the question I have is who could be potential candidates for the ride if Junior Motorsports makes a jump up the Cup? We've got drivers in the Junior Motorsports camp like Brandon Jones. I know Brandon Jones has not been good this year in the Xfinity Series, but he does have Menard sponsorship funding, and sponsorship funding is going to matter, especially for the Cup Series. You do have Justin Allgaier, who has ran in the Cup Series in the past, drove 2 years for H. Scott Motorsports, and also has had select Cup starts over the time working with Hendrick Motorsports as well. So he has a lot of Cup Series experience and especially next-gen experience. You also have Sam Mayer, but Sam Mayer, I don't know if he'd be ready to make the jump up the Cup. I just don't think he would be ready. But then you've got other outside drivers who could have a chance and a shot. Matt DiBenedetto, like I mentioned. Matty D, I think, is a very underrated driver. I know Matt has said publicly he doesn't really go Cup racing, but I do actually believe that Matt DiBenedetto, if he got Cup racing again, I think he'd do really, really good, and I think he's a very underrated driver. What about Carl Edwards somehow? Obviously, Carl Edwards, I'm not sure if he's ever going to come back, but Carl Edwards would be an interesting one. He'd be someone I think to get the best out of the equipment. I know he's been working with Joe Gibbs Racing with their simulator and helped Joe Gibbs Racing with basically working with their Chicago simulator stuff, but maybe Carl Edwards could be someone they can call up. What about Kyle Weatherman? I think Kyle Weatherman would be a really good driver to bring into your new Cup Series team. Kyle Weatherman has been working with Hendrick Motorsports Simulator Group, and I think he would do a very awesome and good job working with that simulation group and probably would have a lot of success working with that as well. It's very interesting to see what happens with Junior Motorsports and they ever jump up. I think there is a slight chance they jump up in 2024, but if you want my honest opinion, I think with them kind of revealed they haven't had any movement when it comes to charters. I just don't think know at this point right now if they're going to make the jump up. And it's disappointing too, and it's a shame because I really want to see Junior Motorsports jump up. And I've been saying this for a long time. Junior Motorsports jumping up to the Cup Series is going to be really, really huge whenever it does happen because I don't know if the team immediately would be competitive, but I do think this team could have a lot of success. And I think they'd be a better team if teams probably like Live Fast Motorsports, and the more people we can get in the field, the better it is for money and all that kind of stuff. But again, it all comes down to the charter agreement. And obviously the charter agreement hasn't even been agreed on for the next deal, which that deal is supposed to expire at the end of the 2023 season. But overall, I really hope there's a way they can find a way to get some charters and get some funding as well so they can make the jump up the Cup because obviously they would have an alliance with Hendrick. Now, one thing a lot of people do mention is they would have to drop the Rick Hendrick name, which certainly I think they would easily be able to do. They still be able to get Hendrick engines. They just can't have Rick Hendrick on the ownership group because Rick Hendrick technically does own 4 cars. And with NASCAR nowadays, you can't even have a 5-car, 5th car, or own another team. You basically only can own 4 cars currently at the moment. Granted, did we see Joe Stanley be somehow an under 23? I don't know really. But overall, when I look at this move, I really do hope one day Junior Motorsports makes a jump up. But like I said, it's unfortunate to the charter system, and the charter system is a lot of money, and it's a lot of funding as well. The teams are going to have if they're going to be able to make that move. So we'll see what happens long term in regards to Junior Motorsports. But it sounds like, unfortunately, at the moment, they aren't going to be able to make the jump up without a charter, which is disappointing and unfortunate. But overall, that's what the situation with money and $30 million, how much charters cost. That number is continuing to exponentially increase, and it's probably going to eventually get to that $40 to $50 million range in the long-term future. So, that is going to today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe to the channel, notifications on us if I win a video does go live on my channel. Follow me Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Links description below that, and comment your thoughts below on today's video. Do you think Junior Motorsports will jump up to the Cup Series or 2024 or not? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what do you think about Kyle Busch almost not racing in 2023? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I don't think I'll have any more videos dropping on the channel later today. Tomorrow there should be a NASCAR Xfinity Series race to be on the channel for New Hampshire. Then on Sunday there will be the 2024 NASCAR Cup Series schedule predictions. And then I might also have another video out later that day. If the race does happen, I might have a race review after that, but probably not because I'm going to be at a Cardinal game later that day. And then next week, if the race gets postponed on Monday, we'll have a race review then. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.